All right, hello, welcome to the Off by One Security stream. That's our last one before the holiday season here, before the end of the year. We're not going to do one next week, I don't believe, but probably the week after. But I will announce that on X and LinkedIn and Discord and everything else, as well as YouTube. But just want to do a thank you now to our guest this week, Filipi Perez. I'll get that right. Coming to us from Portugal currently. I'm actually on the East Coast of the US for the holidays, and we'll be back home for the next stream for sure. Just a reminder for folks on X, because I know a lot of the viewers come from that platform, please do consider jumping over and signing up to the YouTube or subscribing to the YouTube channel if you do get a chance. That's where everything gets stored, of course, after we finish our stream here. This week, we're talking about machine identity and attack path, the danger of misconfigurations. Filipi spoke at B-Sides in at DEF CON Las Vegas
Yeah.
at the same time. It's hard to keep all the talk straight, and I always point out, like, one of the challenges with speaking at any event is the time constraints that you are under, whether it be sometimes 25 minutes or 40 minutes or 50 minutes if you're lucky. So it's always great to be able to have speakers who gave a great presentation come on here, take a little bit more time, be able to answer any questions you might have. But first and foremost, Filipi, why don't you give a little background about yourself so folks know who you are?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk in this time of the year, right? And yeah, so basically I'm Filipi Pires, and now I'm work with threat research, basically. So investigating threats, understanding how this threat works, mainly how they explore, vulnerabilities in the cloud, or even not only the cloud, but in a hybrid environment. And that's that I'm working right now. But I'm have more than 15 years in experience in IT, let's say, and cybersecurity as well. And again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Great, awesome, thank you. Cool. So I think you have set up some slides for us to go through, or you to go through, and us to learn, and then also some demonstrations. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, this conversation or this presentation, let's say, will be divided in two parts. Let's say the first part is more like, I don't like to use this word, like the bullshit thing, but it's like theoretical thing. But it's important, how this important it is to talk about theoretic part to understand this type of concepts. Actually, the idea is the first part is to putting every people in the same page, and after that, I'm explaining more in the technical way how the things works. More sexy part, let's say.
Awesome. Yeah, I always think it's probably best when there's a combination of some slides to go through the concepts and then some demonstrations. So yeah, I'll go ahead and let you get started. I'll just keep an eye on Discord as well, so we re-air it there, and then also maybe some questions coming from different places. So I will post them up when I see them, and yeah, let you go ahead and get started.
Yeah, for sure. As you said, so we have more time here. So like if you have any questions or putting any things in the chat, whatever chat you are or whatever place you are watching right now, so just type in there and I can answer. I can walk in through the presentation. I can answer you as well. Okay. So let's moving forward. So just brief information about me. So as I'm explaining, so I'm head of Identity Threat Labs, Global Product Advocate at Segura. So I'm responsible for this lab, let's say. So basically, Segura is a Brazilian company, but we are from Brazil. By the way, I'm Brazilian, but I'm based here in Portugal today because I'm traveling a lot, and many times I'm traveling to the US. And I was 2 weeks ago, I was in Saudi Arabia to talk in Black Hat and Middle East. And this company basically is responsible for identity, specifically for privileged access management. The acronym is PAM solution, which is privileged access management, as I mentioned it. So basically, my main role in this organization is to identify new type of techniques that attackers are using to explore environments. As I said, environment such as hybrid, such as in cloud, or even on-premise. So understand how the attackers are create these techniques and how they explore. One of the things interesting about my role right now is once I identify any type of new techniques or even older techniques, I can bring some ideas to the product. In terms of creating new features to the product, it's very interesting because based on the things that I'm seeing in the market in terms of attack, I can bring you new ideas to the developer team to put in the product. This seems like putting the DNA inside of the product in terms of technology. It's so nice. And I'm founder investor of this company, which is the Cross Intel. But I'm using this hoodie, basically. So this company is responsible for helping organization to cross different markets, to expand market. For example, if you are US, you can cross to Europe. If you are in Europe, you can cross to Brazil and whatever you want. So basically, this organization is responsible for that. And I'm advisor and partner at Sure, which is a specifically product focused on OSINT, which is open source intelligence. And by the way, I was explaining one of our collectors, which is an open source, we call it Blackbird, that I was presenting at Black Hat Middle East 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned it. So this product specifically is focused on, as I said, open source intelligence. And this is, let's say, more business part. And I'm very involved with community initiatives, such as, for example, B-Side Sport. I'm leader of organizer of this conference. You probably heard about B-Sides. So we run the first edition, I think 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure about times, but it was in the end of November. And I'm a part of the director team of the Red Team Village, which is one of the most famous village at DEF CON. And I'm part of the director team. I'm very involved with that. And I founded this Red Team community, which is another community focused on Red Team, as you can see, but mainly in Brazil and Latin America, helping people to getting, to learning more, to get inside of the Red Team or the offensive security perspective in terms of the field, and supporting other events with this community. Bring some tracks in terms of talks or workshops, or helping people to get inside of this offensive security, which is sometimes is more sexy, as I said. The people like to break things. They don't like to the defensive side, but that's one way to guide in the people. And the other project that I'm very involved with, which is Raíces Cyber. So if you see the accent, Raíces, this is a Spanish. Basically, the idea is to helping people to get inside of cybersecurity, mainly for the Hispanic people. And we put in some people from Brazil as well in this initiative. I'm basically advisor and helping, mainly doing partnership with some universities and supporting some events. That's things that I'm doing right now in terms of community. Everything here is about no proof initiatives. Okay, so again, as I said, just first part here is more like technical things, just putting every people on the same page. And I'm trying to be more fast in this part. And after that, I go to more the technical things. So again, when I look into my right side here, as you can see on the picture, I'm looking to the chat because I can see. So if you have any question, so I see some people like Jason putting hello, everyone. Someone other guy, Mr. Dirt, putting B-sides, which is B-sides. It's amazing. Again, so everything you have, or even the first guy that's for the people putting Kishin InfoSec. So this is going to be a good one. So you can type in the chat. I can look in my right side. I will try to answer everything. So, okay, what is exactly machine identity? Basically, machine identity, because when you talk about identity, we are very used to about the user and password. We just have like one guy. They need to access something. They need to put in the password, and that's it. You will be authenticated, and that you can be authorized to access specifically environment that you try to access in this specifically application or everything you are trying to do. And when you talk about machine identity, we refer to as another things, is a unique identification in terms of machine, but not exactly machine or physical machine. Like, for example, this headphone here in my hand, like is a physical, okay? But in terms of machine identity can be something more about API, which is not physical, but it's something that I need to access to something. Like, for example, in like there's two balls here. So it's a two different applications. So if we connected between those two applications, you need to have some possibility to authenticate in both things, sometimes using the API authentications. In terms of, you don't need to use in like the user and password. You need to have this machine identity, which is API, sometimes application, sometimes it's container, or some digital entities to authenticate, but you're not using the authenticate concept in terms of user and password. Because of that, we call machine identity. Of course, you can call it as well as no human identity, because you don't have like the human in person. You're just using the authorization or the permission this identity has to access something. So that's important just to clarify these communications, okay? So in terms of when you talk about, for example, in the supply chain, sometimes it's quite like a move. When you talk, okay, supply chain is like, oh, there's some some guide, explore something. But in terms of supply chain, for example, if you work in a financial sector, so if you need to pay something instantaneously, like if you live in US, you have a for example, yearly payment, right? So if you use an yearly, for example, you have your bank offering this service. It's a instantaneously payment. So this is offering for your bank, but it's not service by your bank. You have a third party here that offering this to you. In terms of authentications, you have your bank, which is one identity. You have you as a user has another identity, and you have this third party that you called Yelly to pay something. So if you buy like something in the Amazon, for example, you need to have another entity. So I just mentioned it right now in this conversation, 3 or 4 entities. So every single of these entities requires, authentication between each of them. So this is the term about machine identity. So each organization need to have these informations between them. So of course, when you talk about this not new technology, because it's not new, cloud, I'm seeing something in the chat. So it's more like when you talk about cloud, it's not new, but it's getting past. Of course, most part of the new organization, they are building in the concept about the cloud native. So this is required like codes and mainly machine identity. So I saw some comments here in the chat. So how can organizations balance automations in cloud management with strict control over machine identity and access to prevent misconfiguration? That's a good question, because one of the questions that I made at B-Site Las Vegas when I made these presentations, and I did the similar presentation at Cloud Village at DEF CON. So asking to the people, who here work with AWS? So I remembered, so usually not only those 2 different conferences, but the whole conference that I present this topic. So usually 90%, which is 90%, the people in the audience, they use an AWS. So, and the second question was, okay, and this 90%, who here knows about the framework that calls AWS Well Architecture Framework? So usually this 90%, only in the maximum 20% know about this framework. So inside of this framework, we have a many guidance about, misconfigurations, least privilege. Everything here is to avoid misconfiguration in terms of, preventing the misconfiguration. So if the people don't like to read this type of, guidance, which is providing from AWS, of course, they just will using this kind of things in the offering in terms of the company offering the lack of identity. But I will explain more in details when you talk about this information about AWS, for example. So basically, our vision about machine identity management. Usually, we can see many bullets, as I said. So it's not talk about user and password. We talk about IGA, for example, how you manage this governance about everything, privileged access management, secret management, which is very common when you talk about DevOps environment. You have an applications, you need to integrate secrets between those different applications. So how you manage this, how you can change this kind of service account, or sometimes in the past I saw many companies, they put in the secrets attached and specifically user. When the user is fired by the company, the application is going down because this user is totally attached to the specifically not a service account, but a user. So it's a problem here. So we can see in terms of management of identity, we have a cloud entitlement, which is specifically different solutions in the market to manage this specifically entitlements in the cloud, which is very similar to the privileged access management. We have access management, certification lifecycle management, which is another part of machine identity. Again, so in terms of the supply chain, as I mentioned, so remember the first example that I mentioned to you guys. So we have here your bank, let's say, for example, Wells Fargo Bank. You have a Yelly here. So you need to have this certificate to authenticate app to app. Okay. So this certificate, how you manage the certificates, this is a kind of machine identity that we are mentioning right here. And we need to have kind of management, identity security posture management, and there are a bunch of companies looking to the identity threat detection, or the famous ITDR. Okay, so this is everything about machine identity management. Okay, So another pillars, which is discovery, first part to understand everything about how I can protect this. Govern, which is the best practice that I need to apply to avoid the question that we saw in the mysterious there, but here they asking about how we can control or balance or restrict this. We need to see who is responsible for ownership, how we can enforce the policy, how we can access control or manage this access control in the environment. We need to, of course, automate many things. So how we can provide or provisioning the access using the provisioning concept or even just-in-time access, for example. So there are a bunch of things, and be secure, like working the concept about least privilege, or even though looking to, for example, looking to the security posture. And this is the four main pillar here, okay? Okay, let's see. Question from Discord. Are these issues ones that many bug bounty experts are finding or exploiting? Good questions. Yes, of course. So there are a bunch of, there are two things here. One is about where they are looking for bug bounty perspective is they are trying to find vulnerabilities in terms of cloud vendors. When you talk about cloud vendors, we talk about, for example, AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, and others. But another type of idea or strategy is looking to the applications that are inside of this specifically services in the cloud, such as, for example, bug test tree exposed to the internet. So this is not failure for the AWS. This is here is the vulnerabilities or the problem is the company responsible for putting data inside of the bug test tree. So that's the difference here. But yes, there are kind of specifically, again, when you talk about misconfigurations, it's not problem, there is not problem from the cloud. The problem is about someone then putting the error in terms of configuration, which is the customer that you know paid for the AWS, but it's not problem of AWS. But again, when you talk about the bug bounty, it's more about how you can use in your creative mind and how you can explore this. But I in my perspective, I divide this in two ways. One is cloud provider, another way is who is responsible for putting these data inside of the cloud. So I separate. But yes, the question is, there are kind of issues, but misconfiguration is more the problem of the customers, not the cloud provider. Probably you heard about the sharing responsibilities, a very known concept about cloud. So the cloud provider, they provide to you the infrastructure and some guidance, but in terms of applications, responsibility for protecting your data, your identity this is responsibility from the customers, not from the cloud provider, because they call it sharing responsibility.
Okay, but saying comes in, it's a feature, not a bug, right?
yeah, exactly. Cool. So let's talk about some terms specifically when you think about who can explore cloud environments or can explore misconfiguration. So one of these is high value target. Usually high value targets comes this as the terminologies come to the US, the military specifically. They is a term can be like related to a person or resource that the enemy commanders requires to complete the mission. If you are familiar with that, you know, it's very simple to explain this. It's basically when you requires to the enemy commanders required to complete who is the person more important in the organization. So you need to think about that. Sometimes we think, okay, is maybe some leader, maybe some executive. If is this guy or this person is compromised, could become a single point of failure. So think about that. Who is in the organization can be. Sometimes this expression, high value targets, is easier to understand in terms of offensive security, but in terms of on-premise environment. So think about who are the ones that pose of the high impact risk if one attack against them is successful. In terms of on-premise, we have the Active Directory, right? So the domain admins inside of the Active Directory, they are a high value target. But now think who is the high value target in terms of cloud, in terms of, because we have a different perspective of permissions in the cloud. We have different identities in the cloud. So who can be the high value target? So that's interesting. So usually the people thinks that is related to some individuals such as like C-level, board member, executive senior, like the high guys in the organization. But if you see here, there are an explanation about teams and people with have elevated privilege regarding some information organization access. And this case is quite like, okay, we are talking about who? About one single high level, or we talk about everyone? So if you think about who in the organization has high privilege, so think about with me about the developers. So the developers, they need to develop something, and they using, for example, VS Code. So VS Code require what? A domain admin, not domain admin, but the administrator access, right? To install the tool. So if this developer using, for example, VS Code, the security guy need to give to the developer the administrator access just because in this VS Code application. I'm just talking about just on one single application. So if this guy require this, can be a high value target. That's the point here. So sometimes we didn't think about that. So in terms of teams, so every people that in your organization, that if the people has access to a sensitive or a high stack project, can be a high value target. So now maybe can agree, or maybe you cannot agree with me, but every single person in terms of cloud that has an access to the high stack project or the sensitive data can be a high value target. So if everyone in the organization has an access to the sensitive data, so everyone can be a high value target. This answer, in my perspective, is yes. So that's the problem. So we should look into the everyone. So that's the point here. So another term, what is exactly attack vector? Basically, attack vector is the method used by the cyber attackers to compromise a system. So, which is, what is the method used by them? Like send an email with the malware or trying to explore something, is basically the method that I use. So we have another terms, or not be confused, like, for example, attack surface, which is many possibilities to go inside of the organization. For example, they find a specifically bucket test tree is exposed to the internet, or some instance open to the internet. So this is a kind of different ways that they can get inside of the company. So this is the attack surface. When you talk about vector, is the way that they use it, for example, using malware, ransomware, or even phishing. Phishing more strategy using to get inside, but this is the most common attack vector. But there are some human errors, which is the main topic of our conversation, which is misconfiguration. Okay, so I can mention something like weak credentials, which is very common about vector of attack, using poor encryption when you apply in a specific application. Misconfiguration, our main topic here. And when you allow access to a sensitive information via privilege escalation, is another type of specifically vector attack vector. Another term is attack path, just to putting every people on the same page, is basically the visualization and graph way that attack can occurs, or maybe how you can see in the graph way how the attacker can explore different environments in terms of path. It's basically the map. I know this is not graphic, I know, but this is from OWASP, basically just one idea about how I can map this in terms of exploitation. So we have the threat agent here, the person in terms of attack, or the attacker, or the threat actor, or you can use in here, for example, the red teamer, or even the penetration tester guy. So we have here this agent. We have the vector of attack, as I mentioned, and in this case, for example, misconfiguration. And they can explore some weakness or bypass some security weakness, or they can, jumping for that, have an access to any specific security controls, and they can have a specifically impact in terms of technical or even business. It depends of how the attacker using this to explore environments. Just a specific idea about this specifically flow in terms of path. Okay, nice. The last but not least term is choke point. I like it. I love that, because choke point is basically a strategic location where multiple attack paths converge. So that's a very nice and important word. So in the end of this conversation, if you putting this in your mind and you remember about converge moment, so this is very critical in terms of attack, because if you think about cloud, there are a bunch of paths, bunch of ways to explore the high value target. So, and there are a bunch of converge moment to explore environment. Let me just bring to you a kind of not technical example. So imagine with me a big house, 2 floors, okay? And you have in the end of the one of this, in this house, you have a big vault there, okay? And you have a much money there, inside of your vault, okay? And it's there, nice. So you have you have a door in front of your house. You have a door in the back door, in the back of your house. You have a windows in the first floor. You have some windows in the second floor. You don't have any doors in the second floor because you don't have any chairs to go there. Just go, if you'd like to go to the second floor, just for inside, not for outside. Okay, but you have a windows in the second floor. So to go inside of this specifically vault in the end of the house, in the second floor, you have many ways. You can explore the front door, you can explore the back door, you can broke some windows in the first floor, you can broke some windows in the second floor, okay? But you have just one single way to go inside this specifically vault in one specifically room in the end of the house. Just walk into the aisle or the corridor, can mention whatever you want. You can go from the front door, walk into the stair inside of the house, walk into the aisle. You can broke any windows, walk into the stair, go into the aisle. You can broke some window in the second floor, go into the aisle. You see, the aisle is the converge moment where many attack paths find the way. So here one example. So how you can see here in terms of way to explore. For example, here we have a bunch of users. So I will explain more about this open source tool after, but just to mention it. So we have a bunch of users here. You have this group. This is the common group that every single user here is associated to this group. So this is the conversion moment, because just an example. So basically, Filipi, James, Ted, Bill, and Anna. So these guys, they are part of the other groups. So they have their own permission in the cloud, but the conversion moment is here in this policy, and this is specifically AWS group. Once you retire, or retire, not good expression, but when you delete or disable the permissions, so they cannot participate in the same group. When you disable, okay? So when you disable here, you stop it, the converge moment. So basically, this is the choke point, is the point of choke where many attack paths come into the same way. Okay, so that's interesting. Because of that, I like it, because if you work with the defensive side, you should look into that, because this is the moment that you can stop or you can avoid attacks. Okay, cool. So let's talk about some challenge in the cloud, for example. Let's see here one. And it is that requires conditional permission, STS rules chaining, or workload identity federation. You should use in both or all those ideas in terms of bringing the difficulty to the attacker, for example. So, for example, imagine if you enable just one idea about conditional permission or even STS. For example, for some specific attacks, they require to have the STS role specifically attached to them. So in other permission don't require that. So imagine about how much is difficult for the attacker to explore cloud environments once they just finding specifically key or secrets. So once they get inside, for example, imagine, okay, I have here my, for example, imagine that I find some secrets or key. Okay, basically I just came here AWS and type AWS configure. Okay, configure. Once I type in here, just putting better here for you guys. When I click enter, for example, take a look at this. They just require me the access key. And after that, I just can copy and paste. And they require me the secret key. One is access key. The second one is secret. Okay. So once I get those two informations, I just put in copy and paste. Click here. If you see here, they bring me this idea, the full region name. The full region name is this one here. In AWS, you have a bunch of lists. Just putting copy and paste, you can try to see how much or what kind of permission do you have. Once you click enter here, they require the specific output. Once putting this, that's it. You are in. Simple like this. So if you type, for example, AWS, AAM, or like list users, for example, then you bring to you a bunch of users here in terms of how much information you have here. For example, I have this one here, that's one, and so far. This is the lab, it's no problem. So that's the key. So if you see here, it's simple like this. And based on that, I can list, for example, user. I can list, for example, a policy, list policy. Once I put in policies here, for example, I can understand the list of policies. So imagine, or I can go here, for example, AWS policies. If you're not familiar with that, so just coming here, policies, for example, AWS policies, you can click here. You can see the bunch of policies you have, and a bunch of actions are inside of each policies, okay? So it's as simple like this. So once you have this, you can see if this specifically policy group has, for example, STS role attached, or if there are, for example, if it's, for example, management or inline or non-inline. So you can see what is the standard role. You can see this is specifically things. So once you see this information, you can identify if the user enable or not enable this. So basically, the answer is you should putting in the way of the attacker perspective, bring more difficult to them. So if you just enable the standard policies from the AWS, you are bringing this life for the attacker or even the red teamer more easier, because they just need to go there, understand how this information works, and that's it. So answer the question is you need to enable as much configuration as possible. Okay, cool. So this is specifically challenged. So probably if you work with cloud, we're very familiar with that. But 99% of the security breach, it's coming for this customer responsibility, as I mentioned in the beginning. Okay, one of the questions mainly due to the misconfiguration. So it's about the question that we received in the beginning of this conversation. 70% of the companies using at least 2 cloud service provider, and 33% of identities of breaches are related to the compromised privilege account. Again, this is about permissions that you have inside of the secrets and key. Okay, so and many things to manage it. It's a lot of things to manage. Like AWS has more than 80,000 permissions in the cloud. Azure has a bunch of over 20,000 actually. And Google GCP or Google Cloud has more than 11,000, which is many configurations. Okay, cool. So I just to finish this theoretic part, so I bring something about attack vector, attack path, how this things works. So now let's look into AWS specifically. So Filipi, how this attack works in terms of GCP or in terms of AWS or, for example, Azure, or in terms of OCI. So the logical about the attacker is quite similar in terms of, for example, OCI, because the idea of IAM is very similar to the AWS. GCP is quite not the same, it's different. And Azure is different because they work with subscription. So each cloud provider, you need to understand how each cloud provider works. But I just would like to bring to you the concept about how we can explore this misconfiguration. So if not familiar with AWS AIM, basically is the service responsible for manage this identity access management. So every single service that you have inside of the AWS is controlled by the services, the EIM service, okay? So everything is controlled by EIM. So basically they centralize everything, and here we can define who is authenticated and who is authorized to access in terms of permissions, okay? So basically everything that you set in AWS, you need to set in the EIM, because they are responsible for allow you to access something. So if you're very familiar with my, for example, here, my virtual machine here, I'm using virtual machine here. So you have here a CPU, you have a memory, you have a disk. So in terms of cloud, it's very similar, but you have a service responsible for offering you the EC2, which is the virtual machine, but is the instance. You need to attach a disk. So this attachment, this kind of puzzle, you can do this because of the AIM service, because you set some permissions to them, and they allow you to do something in the cloud. Okay, so basically this is the way that you can set some policy in the AWS. So basically, you have this statement, we call this statement, that you can contain some specific elements, which is the version. This statement is kind of block of informations, which can see, for example, basically the effect here. This statement, they will allow you or deny you to do something. Basically, this is one of indicator important. Another thing is basically in terms of this presentation is the actions, which is include a bunch of list of actions that the policy allows or denies. So if you see these things are related to both of them, like actions is related to the effect, okay? And of course, in some circumstances, you just have a resource and you can set some conditional. Everything here, you can set the configurations using, for example, CLI, which is the command line interface, or you can use in the JSON file to set some elements, okay? That's cool. So this is the example, simple, not from me. This is from AWS. If you see here, this is the source of this EIM read-only access. If you see, provides read-only access to EIM via AWS Management Console. This is, as I mentioned, the JSON file. You see the statement, you see the block of information. The effect in this case is allow. The action, which is in the first part here, you can see the service, which is IAM, which is list and the asterisk. You have the same service here and the get, just to put in get to require some information. And the resource here, you can see the asterisk, which is in some case, or the most part of the case, you should answer the same other questions here that we received. Is basically when you put in the asterisk, you are bring the life of the attacker more easier than difficult, okay? Because you should put in the correct resource that can allow. But this is here, guys, it's very important because this specifically is a standard policy from AWS. And usually I like to do these questions for the people in the presentation. So who thinks here in the chat, or what do you think this is configuration is safe or not safe? What do you think about that? So tell me what you think about in terms of security. Safe, is not safe? What do you think in terms of this policy specifically? I'm asking about the policy. I am read-only access. Is something that we should have some concern, or you don't have any concern? What do you think about that? So type in the chat, what do you think about that? Because this is specifically from AWS. It's not from me. I don't customize that. It's just from AWS. That's the point here. Let me just check the chat. So it seems like most of the issues are accident doing to the many ways to make a single mistake on a permission that negates all the correct seats you. Yeah, that's a good observation. Yes, so exactly. You see, I will show you basically what is the impact about this misconfiguration. But imagine, so if I go back here to the virtual machine, it's like here, imagine that you need to set some, for example, configuration in AWS, for example. You can go here, for example, and put in policies AWS for EC2, for example, which is the instance. So then you bring it to here, identify basic policies from Amazon EC2. So if you see here, so there are default, okay, policy from Amazon EC2. If you see here, they are describing you the actions for EC2, which is the action, what is described. They came here, they bring a bunch of ideas of how you can set, and here they explain you the difference between like research. Remember that I explained to you about the asterisk. Here they are setting a specific instance, or here they put in the asterisk in the end of the AWS resource name. So you see here, it's the question is, why make it so complex? Because that's the possibility and the complexibility about the not only AWS, but whatever cloud provider you use in your organization. You should go deeply and in details. This is the way that you can increase the security posture in terms of your security cloud provider, right? So that's basically the answer. So if you go back here, some conditional script for Amazon, And here, take a look at this action. If you see here, they explain the service, okay? And here is the possible, let's say, configuration in terms of restriction. But if you see one single question about one single EC2, so imagine your organization that you are managing this is so big, and you should look into the each of this EC2 instance. It's just EC2 or EC2 API or EC2 console or just a CLI. It's very complex. So the answer is simple. Like they prefer to using this default policy just to enable that, and that's it. They doesn't care about how much actions are inside of this standard or this default policy. So basically, they don't care about that. So that's the big issue here. So if you see here, so answer this specific question that I made to you guys about EIM read-only access is safe or not safe. The answer is simple. It depends. It depends who received this policy, for example. If you're a security guy responsible for integrate specifically CSPM tools or even KIM solutions tools or like another identity solution tools, many times this tools require to you this specifically access. But you are the guy of the security. You need to create a specifically user. Let's say, for example, let's call user for integration. So this is the service account responsible for integration with CSPM2. So this service account or this specifically user, like putting double quotes here, this user that you created, you need to enable this standard policy. But this is the point. So if you talk about, for example, the guy that works in financial, let's say in your financial team, or if the guy works in an HR team, so why this guy required to have these permissions attached to them or to him or to her? So they don't require that because this is the guy responsible for managing tools from financial, or this guy responsible for HR or talent acquisition. So they don't require us to list all users or to get the all informations about the EIM service. So that's the mistake here. That's the problem here. When you allow this specifically default policy or the standard policy to the wrong user, okay? So just to clarify, this is the AWS AIM. So, okay, how seems way too broad to be secure. Yeah, this is the tough part about cloud. Because of that, there are a bunch of misconfiguration happening because, there are a bunch of things. So I'm going to give an example about the visibility in just single, like 90 users, okay? So just to walking through how the attacker can works. So just some idea. So again, to get inside of the environment, I just need to have, as I show you here, just to, if you're here, just putting AWS configure. Once you type enter here, they will show you the access key and secrets. So just need to have this two information. Okay, Filipe, but how I can get this information? So this is the simple code that I created using Python. Very, very simple. You can using this if you want for stud perspective, please. Not for bad things, but for research, you can try to using this. Basically, this is a simple, you can use a GitHub token, GitLab token, whatever, just copy and paste here. And this is the rejects, basically. This is the regular expression. They will try to find some like access key, secrets, or GCP API key, Oracle, the same case, and generic API key and password. You can run this in your environment or in your lab, whatever you can try. You need to put in the token here, and they try to figure if you can find in some code in the GitHub or GitLab some access key or secrets. So once you get these informations there, you can just type here, as I mentioned with you, AWS configure. When you do that, they will bring you this information, copy and paste, and that's it. Okay. So this is the idea that I bring. Simple like this code. Once you get inside, the next steps is to explore environment, or to, let's say, try to explore, understand more, or doing this enumeration process. This is the normal expression to talk about offensive security. Let's enumerate everything you can. So let's suppose that you get inside of this specifically secreting key. Once you discover this information, just copy and paste and try to list the user. So if you see the example here, I got these keys and I type AWS AIM list users. if you see here, the access that I received, or the answer that I received, was the access denied. What that means in this case? Specifically, this access key and these secrets didn't allow me to access something. Okay, so this is the example basically, because, but if you see, they didn't block at me, just tell me, they just say to me, the access was denied because this secret or this key that you have didn't allow you to do that. Okay, and if you see, the second example is list policy. If you see the same result, access denied. The third one is access list group is the same, access denied. So imagine that you find any key here, copy and paste here. I'm not sure. Let me just check in here if I have something easier here during our conversation. Let me just check in here once again, guys. I like to do this because we have a time we can do that. 1 second. Where is this? It's over here. Okay. I'm just trying to bring some example to you guys here, just to do this presentation more nice here. Okay, so we are doing this in live. Okay, so I'm just
Just got to challenge the demo gods, right?
Yeah, because everything is done here. I have another secret here for my lab. I'm just see here, copy paste. This is another one. Let me just getting another one here. I'm not sure if this works or not works, but let's see here what kind of information we have. Enter, region enter, and that's it. We are in. Okay, so I'm just putting like, the second one is to list. AIM list users. Let's see if they allow me. Okay, that's interesting, because this specific key is from one user that I saw here. They allow me to do something, which is cool. Let me see administrator. Let me go behind view. Seems like more the administrator access as well. If you see here, there are a bunch of things. Cool. We can explore more after. So let me just policy here. Policies. Let me see what kind, how much policies we have here. So in terms of permission, and this is specifically user. So, which is cool. We have here the policy. We have the policy name, which is attached demo. So if you go to the AWS, we cannot see, you will not see any policy using this specifically name. In this case, what that means specifically, which means that you don't have, if you don't find anything like this, you didn't find, which is this policy is custom, which is created by someone. Okay, we have the policy ID, we have the AWS resource name, you have here the version, which is version 1, you have one day we created, which is in 2023, and when it was updated, which is never be updated, which is interesting to see. Permission boundary user count is 0. Let's moving forward. Demo lab, another custom policy. Let's go to see 2022. Let's see EIM demo, another custom policy, just a custom policy. S3 demo, another custom policy. Thor lab, another custom policy. Let's go administrator access, which is cool. So this is not custom policy. This is the standard policy. This is the full policy. So the question is, why this user or this key has, if you see here, there are in a minimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 custom policy, but they have another one here, which is the administrator access, which is a standard, which you have a bunch of access. Power user access. I think this is another custom policy. Yeah. I think, I'm not sure. I'm just checking here. I think it's a custom as well. AWS policies. And let me copy and paste here. Let's see. No, you see, it's not custom policy. It's default policy. So that's a way that the attacker explore environment. So let's see here, because I don't have any idea what kind of things we have. Woo! You see? the name is quite interesting, power user access. It's quite the same idea of administrator access, the name power, but who knows. But if you see here, like not actions, organization, but they allow to get account information, get a primary mail, list of regions, create service. Is not, if you see here, is not administrator access, but they list the lead services linked rule, list the rules. I can try to get this information, and I can describe effective policy as well. So if you see these informations here is attached to this one here in this policy. So I'm just let's, for example, administrator.
Pretty interesting too that the policy template up there says 2012 on it, and it's still resident. You know.
Yes, exactly. So let me go to just to compare, because that's the things that happen. So let's go below here to see. So this is the administrator access. Action is asterisk, research and asterisk. You see the difference? So if you go below here, basically, so we can list some information you can see. So the point is, so think with me, guys. Okay, Philip, but if you see the power access, they not action. They didn't allow me to list user here. You see? Right? But when I type, for example, when I tap there, so they show me the information here. So why they show me? You see, they show me everything here in terms of users. So if I go up, Anna, Bill, they show me. So the answer is simple, because we have a bunch of policies attached to these users. And one of the policies is administrator access, which is this another one. So this is the most important policy when you compare to both. Okay, so when I type there, they're using this policy because they more high than the power user. So because of that, it works. Okay, so that's the key here in this example. Okay, so but if you see here, this in this screenshot here, this permission didn't allow me to access here. Didn't block it. They didn't block it. Just didn't allow me to access. So now let's go to the attack perspective. Okay, if you see here, let me just put in one single way. Not one single. You can create policies using CLI or using UI, for example, user interface. In this case, I'm using UI here. So if you see the AWS, you have the EIM service, which is the set of permission you can set. You can see the actions, and usually in the actions you have the layers or the level, which is here this 5, let's say, list 39, read 32, write 66, permission management does 23, and tagging 16. So this is basically how you can add actions. Remember when I explained about the JSON file? One is actions, and the second one is research. The first one is the service, the second one is the actions, the third one in the research. Okay, so imagine with me what is the impact about one single action added in the wrong way for a specific user. So if you, for example, open here the permission management, you have a bunch here like attach group policy, create policy, deleted group policy, delete rule, permission boundary, delete the user, and you can see here create policy version, one single one here. So there are another here like attach user policy, delete account password policy. There are a bunch of actions here. I just selected one specific, then 23, just selected one in this example. And after that, I just went here and I selected this. And if you see here the research, take a look at the difference. I put in here the AWS research name, and here I have the specifically number, and you see the policy, and you see the asterisk here. If you come back here in this specifically explanation, let me go back here, not here, I think it's over here. So if you go here, take a look this one here, for example, in this example, we have here the AWS research name, the service of, the cloud provider, the service, the region, and the AWS research name, the instance number. And if you see here is very how can I say that? It's very, we have many informations in details here, okay? Very granular. So if you go here, they put in asterisk here in this example. And this is another example. They just, to specify all resource, we're just using this asterisk in the wheel card resource. You see? So if you go back in the example, I just put in asterisk in the policy, not in the whole resource. Like in this example, just to bring you guys a kind of difficult way to try to explore. Not too easy, but it's not too difficult. But I put in the middle here. If you see, that's the difference. Just to have an attention, and this is specifically to this. Okay, cool. So this is the last. This is the last one. This is the policy that I created. It's a custom policy. If you see here, one single effect, which is allow, one single action, which is create policy version. And the resource, again, is not asterisk for everything. It's just for policy. Okay, cool. Hi there. Will it be possible to hide the screen for better visualization? I'm trying to. Okay, I'm not sure if you are seeing in the live or not live, but I'm trying to putting more up here to understand these things that I'm explaining. So just going forward, I'm just seeing some questions. So can most of this be automated, or is there a lot of manual components? Good questions in the Discord channel we have. So that's the key. So my perspective, my opinion, we should create it more like custom policies. Of course, there are a bunch of ways you can automate it using, for example, cloud formations or setting anything as a code. But when you create these things, you should create it using the custom policies. Because if you're using the standard policies, as I said, so there are a bunch of action inside of this custom policies, or this, not custom, this standard policies, the default policies. That's the mistake here. You should just enable, as I explained here in this, here, for example. So there are a bunch of actions here included. So, for example, here is asterisk. So when you apply something, it's more easier, just enable asterisk, and that's it. You don't have any, you don't care about it, you know. Sorry, this is the key. You should be more granular. You know, that's the difficult here, but you can automate this. So that's the point here. Okay, cool. Let me go back here. Okay, I just created this policy, as you can see, create policy version. When I create this, okay, streaming this YouTube. Okay. So this is the only policy that I created, and I called attack demo or whatever. I will put in the name of the policy. And I went to the Google, and I asked to Google, okay, how I can create, for example, specifically policy using or giving me the full access in the cloud. So I think the guys can put in the description the link of the article that I created, but I can show you here as well. There's no problem, just an idea. The question that I made here, it's a labs.blog segura.blog. So here you can find the article about this presentation in cover attack path based on misconfiguration. And I put in the question that I made to, when I wrote this article, I didn't use a ChatGPT. I asked into Google, but they're using the same idea about Gemini. Let's go below here to see the questions. Okay, yeah. So the question was, how I can get a full access in the AWS. So they bring this information to me, simple like this. I put in there AM full access policy. This was the question. And the second question was AWS CLI, how to create new policy version. So imagine if you are a newbie guy, you don't know how this works, just asking. I just asking to the AWS, and I put in the print screen here to you guys. I asking, okay. Once I did that, they suggest to me this is specifically code in JSON file. If you see here, I just put in attack exploitation, doc.json file. And if you see the effect, it's allow. And the actions is AIM with asterisk. But they bring more information here about organizations, which is different. Because in the AWS, they works in a different way. like you can have an account and you have an organization. So if you work in a company, so probably you have more than one account, and those bunch of accounts, they are behind of a specific organization level. So you have two levels, one organization, and the second one is the account level. So I'm just working, I'm created the permissions in the account level, but this policy here, as you can see, they are bringing me the organization level. Is a kind of, privilege escalation here, because I'm moving to the account level to the organization level to list the root, for example, here. If you see it, I'm putting here list root. You see, list root organization. So that's the thing that I can put in here, for example. So let me just erase everything here and let me go. Okay, let me just moving forward. Cool. Remember that I asked into Google how I can create and use CLI here. They answered me. You can just type the command. I just type in the command. And if you see here, they put in AWS AEM create policy version. I just copy and paste. I need to set the policy AWS research name, which is this one here, POC or POC attack module. And I need to set the new policy document, which is this attacker exploitation.json, which is my file, okay? In the end, I just put in set as a default. Once I did that, take a look what happened. So I had this policy, which is the policy that I create with one single policy version, as you can see here. When I get there, I change the policy because I put in set as a default. I change the permission to this one. I escalate the privilege using one single action in terms of misconfiguration, as you can see here. So that's the key. That's the way that you can explore using this misconfiguration for a specific user. So after that, we can list everything you want, okay? So what is the message here? We should look in details for each account or each policy we need to set in our environment. That's the challenge here. So how we can prevent this, or how we can see how we can, have this information here. There are a bunch of tools. There are some enterprise too, but I'm just bringing to you some open source and free tools to you guys. So one of these tools that I did many studies or research about that is Cartography. And I have those guys to, to create this tool. Basically, this tool is creating using Python, as you can see here, and they're using another Neo4j database. So as you can see here, you can integrate with many collectors, such as, for example, AWS and different services here. You can use it, for example, Cloudflare. You can integrate with Falcon, Digital Ones, many other like Microsoft Azure, Kubernetes. There are a bunch of things here, and this is an open source. What is the challenge right here is to need understand about Neo4j database here. You need to understand what kind of cipher query you need to type here. They're using this AWS principle, which is like the high level of the elements, and they set here the policy attached to this specifically principal service. You have a statement, which is the bunch of the block of information, and you can set here, for example, where you can find whatever user you have with this specific create policy version. You can have this information. You can set this, and they can bring you this information to you. For example, these 5 users, they have this specifically create policy version attached, which is this user specifically can be the high value target, because if they have any AWS key or secret exposed, the attacker can just create a new policy and set as default. Okay, Filipi, but in AWS, we just need to set, in terms of policy, just, if I'm not wrong, just a 5 policy. Okay, if they just have everything enabled, like 5 policies, you can set a new one to the set as default. If I'm not wrong, I can be wrong, but if I'm not wrong, you cannot do this attack. But usually, we try to set them specifically for each single user or each single service. So one user can be more than one policy, or based on that or whatever. What is the mistake here, guys? I don't want to have any problem with my developer team. What I do, I just put in the administrator access. That's it. You see, that's the mistake here in terms of security things. So this is one very interesting tool. So let's go to, for example, another tool, which is that I like it a lot, which is AWSPX. So I have here one example. So I have here in my lab AWSPX here to show you. So basically, I have here, I know another thing. So I need to know about Cipher Query here, the same case. I can use in here the same concept about Bloodhound, about, understand about multiple attack paths. But even in cartography or even in the AWSPX, we don't have the same idea about, and we have the same concept about attack path, but you don't have any attack module that I just click in there, like for example, DCC sync attack or pass the hash attack. Just click in that and they show you this information. You don't have this information here in this platform specific. But I can set here, for example, from any to, for example, to this effective admin, which is everyone that has this pseudo administrator access here. When I play here, run, then you run here for us. This is, let's pray to the Lords of Demo. Let's see if it works. And it works, which is good. So here we can see, for example, how each one of these two works, or specifically. So we have here some users in this example. We have this Thor user, business manager, CEO, administrator, and CFO, which is just a generic name, okay? And these guys, they are part of this specific administrator access group. So the question is, why does business manager guy, or even the CEO or the CFO, why they need to have access to the administrator access? I don't have any fucking idea, but anyway, they have an access. So that's the key. So here's the administrator access policies, which is different. This policies is attached to this specifically group of policies. We have another one here, which is the Thor Lab, which is another, in this case, is a custom policy. And we have here Anna, which is another user. Support is a user. EIM demo is a user. If you go here, Filipi, which is, I think is me, Bill, James, and Ted. So let's think about this graph here. So if you see, so those guys here, they are part of the user group, which for me seems like more the generic group. When you start to work in the company, someone attached this policy to you. So that's the something here. So if you click here, for example, they will show you this information. For example, okay, so we have this name is user default, we have the ID, we have here the specifically AWS research name, which is the group, which is user default, which is another custom group. The documents, let's see if there are no, they are not any documents, and they are any notes. Okay, well, let me go back here, and here another interesting point here, important information to collect here and to see. For example, let me go back below and let's see about our CFO. So if I click here in the CFO, I can see here the access key, which is the user, because before I was looking to the group, not the user. Here I can see, for example, the access key, group list, which is administrator access, which is bad because it's a CFO, login profile, which is created by whatever, password request fire is required, it's let's say required is false. Tags, let's see, they are tagging demo and lab, Thor, high value target, you see, and attack module, which is interesting. Notes, no notes. So let's see here. So probably this guy was a part of this demo. If I click with the right button, they will bring for us the inbound actions, the outbound path, the outbound actions, and the inbound path. So let's go to the inbound action. So if I click here, they bring to us some interesting things here. So let me just put in here, for example, this Thor Lab, this support user. It's small, Filipi, I know, no worries. I will show you more in details here. So this is another EIM read-only access. Let me go here. This is the administrator access. So what is the interesting point here? We have here policies here, which is EIM demo, support user, and Thorlab. Remember when we got this credential here in terms of policy, remember power user, we have administrator access, you have a S3 demo. So EIM demo, when you go back here to the AWSPX, we cannot see this here. We just seeing here the administrator access, which is a group, but we see here the policy, this one here, this one, this one, this one here, and the administrator. So in this cycle here, I'm not good in cycle, but anyway, this cycle here, this is a user. So I'm just putting here just to be clear for you guys. So this is specifically CFO. They are part of this specifically policies, as you can see here. Okay, 5 policies. And this is a part of this group. Let's see if they are part of another group. No. Let's see here, user default. The CFO is not part of this group policy. You see this policy here, which is the default. This is just part of this, only one here. But they have another permissions, which is some ideas. Here, take a look at this here. 6 actions, 49 actions, and 16 actions, and 47 actions. So let me just click in twice here. Ooh, let's see how much actions this user has. So why this amazing CFO, the guy responsible for pay our salary, why they have this bunch of actions here? So let's try to imagine with me some possible impacts with if the CFO, if they like putting this AWS key and secrets exposed to the internet, if someone got these credentials here. So what is the idea? So like, let's see what the attacker can do this. Simulate a principal policy, get access to the last user, get user policy, which is interesting, but just get, tag user. Here I have an interesting thing here. The attach user policy and attach a user policy. Create user. So if we got this, we can just come here, for example, and we can AIM, AWS, for example, create policy, EIM, create user, instance profile, create user. Let's suppose this is the thing that we can use in here, for example, because grants permission to create a new user, access right, and effect allow. You see the impact? So let's see another one here. Attach user policy. Grants permission to attach a managed policy. This is terrible. Permission management and allow. So imagine I just came here and I just type here, for example, attach policy. Attach what? I'm just checking. Attach user or even group policy. Group policy. And just moving forward. Okay, Filipe, but what is the impact? Imagine, remember, this here, I'm just talking about what? I'm talking about this custom policy, which is Thorlab. You see here? Thorlab. So what is the logic behind of this? This is the custom policy. But I know, and you know, that this is the most high-level policy here, right? So I just came here and I can set here, for example, administrator. Let's suppose, I'm not sure what is the command, but I just came here, administrator, access policy, or whatever. Or maybe just came here, for example, and I just type it here, for example. How can I attach a new policy using AWS CLI? Let's suppose. Attach user policy command. Okay, command line. Attach user policy. I can set here, for example, username, requires global options debug. I can use a certain file. So here is the example that I can use, for example. AIM, attach policy user. I need to set this. It's just here, for example. I could, like, for example, copy here. And let's say paste here, for example, and type here in terms of the user, for example. You see, so just a simple idea for you guys, like how can I set here, for example, a new policy, you see? Because imagine in this specific example that I'm bringing to you right now here, I found a touch user policy here. So I don't imagine this user don't have any administrator access, but they have this action. So this is the impact to one single action. You see the impact about misconfiguration. So for the offensive perspective is, okay, once I get this, I just need to list. The first idea is, let me just come here and AWS EIM service list policy. When I get there, let me just see what kind of policy I have. If I have custom policy, I'm just trying to see how much actions I have. Demo lab, I don't have any idea how much actions I have here. Okay, let me just integrate with AWS PX, for example. If you found any attached user policy, if you allow me to do that, I just need to go to the CLI and I need to set here, simple like this. But Filipe, I don't have idea about the AWS resource name. It's here, guys. I just need to change here. This is the standard number of the account. You see? Copy and paste. That's it. It's simple. I know that's not. Sometimes, Stephens, I'm a professor in the master degree here in Portugal, and the student asked me, because many times they came for just engineering, not for security. They asked me, cyber is so difficult, and I said, no, man, it's easy. Broke the things is easy. Just need to understand about cloud, about permissions, about system operation, about everything. The difficulty is about those bases,
Yeah,
so
like somebody was saying, does the config and permissions really need to be this complex and granular? It seems like it's set up for admins to fail.
yeah, exactly. Does the configuration permission really needs to be complex or granular? Yeah, exactly. That's again, I know that our day is very complicated. Our job sometimes requires many things. We need to be more fast in answer things, but here is the answer. So sometimes we prefer to go to the easy way. So you need to calculate the impact. So I was talking with a friend of mine during the Black Hat. So he said to me, man, I'm the application security guy. I'm in the middle of the specifically attack that happened in my organization. And I said, wow, it's complicated. And he said, so I'm the war home here. And I said, I'm sorry to hear that, man, but I'm hope you are trying to help your colleagues. And he said, no, man, I have a bunch of applications behind me, and I made a mistake in one single application. And I said, what is the problem? That application was exploited. And I said, ooh, Jesus. So that's the problem. So sometimes happen. So we need to fix. And he said, okay, I'm working hard to fix this. And that's the point here. We have a challenge. I know, but we need to using some tools to try to help us. So let me go to another one. Can you model attack path that pivoting from Kubernetes workloads identities into Cloud IAM, particularly where service accounts, OICT federation, and cloud rules intersected? So that's a very, very, very nice questions. And I have one of my research about that is not here in my GitHub, but I can go here to my GitHub here, 1 second. So Filipi 86 GitHub, because let me go here to my GitHub. You can type here, for example, repository. I'm starting to do some research about this specifically project here, which is Starbase from Juniper, by the way. And they have more than 100 tools in terms of integration that is supported. One of these is Kubernetes, of course. If I'm not wrong, it's here. So yeah, that's the big possibility to pivoting workloads into this, specifically EIM services and federations. There are a bunch of possibilities. We should try it. We should make some research. My personal challenge is to creating this because I'm working, I'm helping Segura to creating specifically product to bring this to the community. But I was working before Segura in another project. This is more business, which is Sapporo company. They are focused on in attack path as well. When I work at that company and at Segura as well, my in terms of this research that I'm doing is how the attacker can pivoting, as you asking in the Discord channel, pivoting between different applications. So imagine to have this map here in Graphway, coming to the specifically Kubernetes, going to the, let's say, exploring the workload, the entity or instance, or what is this application is, and to put in the graph map. So it would be more easy to understand. Or like, for example, the Bloodhound, that you have just one single button that you can see what is the shortest path to my high value target. So we have this button in the Bloodhound perspective. If you're not familiar, Bloodhound is from SpectreOps, which is the company focused on offensive security. They have the Bloodhound for open source. They have an enterprise version, of course. They have an Azure Hound, more focused on Azure. But the question is more about other platforms. So my desire, let's say, is to create something about that in the future. So you are impersonating an administrator via those actions showing the Neo4j. In this case, no, I'm just actually, I have one user, and this user has an integration with this specifically tool. And based on that, I just list. So this is effective admin is the high value target. So this is the high value target. So I'm not impersonate. I'm just have a user, which is the credential and key that I have, and I integrate AWSPX, and AWSPX bringing me this information right here. So basically, is that. It's simple like this. Okay. So cool. So let me go just to this specifically another tool that I would like to show you something more about how you can create this because the challenge here is, okay, I need to understand more about Neo4j database. Okay. So like, for example, if you see here the cipher queries, okay, what is the shortest path about source to the transitive attack to the target, which is the administrator active effective admin. I could be putting, for example, any to any here, like any to any, for example. I don't have any match here. I'm just trying to putting another query here, any to any, for example. If I play here, they are bringing me to a bunch of information that I integrated here in my lab. Will be quite complicated here in this case. You see? So there's a bunch of services here. They including buffer overflow here in this case. I'm just clicking here. I need to set here, it's better to set some, like, for example, some user, like Anna, for example, any to Anna. So they change here and they bring you this information to here. Let me just see here. Let's enter once again here. I think I lost the database. 1 second. Yeah, they tried to connect. Okay. Any to Anna. Let me just play here. Just as bringing us Anna about the actions. Okay, they bring to information about this is user specifically. You see, so Anna is a part of. It's just answer. It's not impersonate here. I'm just trying to identify each user, and each user they have a specifically information about. This is the permission group that I participating, that she's participating, and how she is related to this effectively admin in this case, or the full access. Okay, so there are a bunch of ways, but the challenge here, guys, is to understand about this specifically thing here about cipher queries. Okay, so I need to list the target. I need to know here. So if you see here, for example, in using Starbase using the same concept about Neo4j, for example, if I copy and link the image just to see in the best way here, for example, this GIF. So we need to know more about cipher query. They put in different ways to match those informations. So this is the big quite challenge for us to understand more about that. So thinking about that, what I created in my organization in Segura. So we create this specific program that you called Build With Us, which is this community product. You can use it for free. You can use it in your master degree. You can use it whatever you want. You cannot buy this, by the way. If you try, you cannot buy because we don't sell this. Basically, it's just a program built with us. Just you can fill this using your private email if you want. You can use it in a corporate mail, of course, but it's just for community. Once you get inside, you have this information here. We can integrate with your environment. You have those identities here. I'm just putting in English here. You can see bunch of, it's the same idea. Take a look at the users, ANA, CEO, administrator, access. You see for each user, for example, if you click here, they will bring this information about recommendations, which is they have administrator access, they have MFA, we should enable the MFA, policy password. There are a bunch of information you can explore here, for example, bunch of recommendations. You don't need to know about the cipher query here. We just have, for example, how you can set up for those three main cloud provider, which is AWS, GCP, Azure, OCI. And we have a bunch of security policies here, the standard, by the way. You just have here, you can set, for example, the criticality for each one this. We have a global security policies. We have a custom. If you have any, let's say, demo environment or for research or whatever, you can set here. Doesn't matter. And one of the interesting things is about machine identity, which is not available yet in this case, but I can show you in the sandbox mode here. If you click, when you collected this, you see the sandbox mode, which is basically is a fake data, basically, as a for demo or for whatever. You don't need to integrate anything. If it's just for like a research, you don't need to integrate with anything. But you can see the identities here, identity machine, for example. How you can, like quarantine it, or setting the user, how you can set this for managing things. But one of the things that I really like is to integrate with machine identity, with machine learning, for example. So if I go, for example, here in terms of machine identities, just clicking, for example, this user, they have a bunch of recommendations like in my lab. But if you go, for example, here in user MFA, you just can click in the documentations. They will bring how you can fix this using the standard from the AWS. You just clicking acknowledgement, which is okay. I have this. I'm according this. I know that I have this problem, and I agreed to have this a kind of risk accepted. Okay, but we will have in the future this Segura Intelligent, which is our Gen AI that bring it to you this specifically template that you can copy and paste in the CloudFormation Terraform, or in CloudFormation or even Terraform. They will bring the code to you and how you can, remediate this in the easy way. Once you do that, you just click in the bottom and they will connect with your cloud and they will run. And when they do this, they will fix this. If you see here, it's no more here like MFA. That's it. So other thing that I like is attack path. Basically, this is the feature that I created based on the research that I made that I was explained to you. So they bring to you this idea about the attack path, the description, which is basically here, if you see what is exactly one attacker with this specifically roles, or even with these actions, not roles, actions. So allows the attacker or whatever, red teamer escalate privilege and attaching policy in user, group, and roles. So what is the requirements? They just need to have this one of those three. And what is the impact? Privilege escalation, as I show you, attaching new policy, credential compromise, or even operational interference. So that's basically the idea behind of this specifically attack. And if you see here, there are another Segura Intelligence as well. So how you can remediate the same idea about bringing to you how you can set. So if you see here, the JSON file, or in this case, CloudFormation, in this case. So the same idea, policy name, they are creating a new custom policy. The effect is deny this three main, yes, is research is totally available. You can just, it's here. Just can scan this QR code. They'll be redirected to the main page, and you can register in your personal email if you want. You will receive the access. It's easy. When you access this, you will be in the sandbox mode, exactly in this mode that I'm presenting to you right now. Because first idea is just to present in this sandbox mode. Once you, okay, I would like to integrate with my environment, just disable that, and that's it. I'm disable the sandbox mode, and you will see basically here my lab in this case. So the username, everything are here. Attack pack, for example, I can see the TED. Let's see. TED is not available. Let me just do I never remember what is I think this one here. I'm not sure, because I have a many labs here to do many things here. So let's see this one here if it works. TED. No, it's not this one here. It's demonstration or demo. I'm not sure. Let's see here. I think can be this one here. It's another one. Yeah, this one here is another lab. You see Maria. So she has the same thing. And let's see, for example, this W Santana. This is the problem with this guy. And there are a bunch of things that you can use in here in your environment. The point in this specifically project, you can use it for free. You don't need to. If you want to pay, you cannot pay because we not charge for it. So sorry for that. This is the proper project that I help to develop it. And when you put in here, you see the community version here. In my case, is different because my is for presentation. And this is the one way that you can helping, or how we can helping the community. Basically, this is some graphics. But think with me now in terms of user, okay? So imagine how you can, let me just go here. Okay. So imagine how you can, okay, once you get this access here, okay, I have a bunch of users here. In this case, it's policy, but let me just go back here and just to go to the end of the presentations here. So imagine, okay, let me just type here, for example, AWS AIM list users. Some possible impacts. I was telling you one thing different that I will do here is, for example, okay, I have just names here, username, but I don't have any like specifically name. But let's suppose that I found here, for example, okay, CN user, which is custom, but I have here one name specifically, Filipi Pires. It can be my name, so I can just copy here. And one of the interesting thing about this, how you can try to get more information. So remember, so when you get some thinking about offensive security, so we got, for example, AWS keys and secrets. Sometimes we found the secrets and key, but you can see some username about that. So here, one of the things that I would like to show you about this is specifically very interesting too, which is Sherlock AI. So we just can put in copy and paste here, like which is my name. If you see here, you can try to, in this case, they can try find, for example, a bucket exposed if you'd like to see some exposed to the internet. Well, let me just try to see here if I can, is in the policy name. I can try to figure, but I'm not sure if I have any bucket just exposed. But let's see about the user. So once I click here, for example, the username, I'm just suppose my username is Filipi86, for example. I just put in here. Let's see. Imagine once you do this in terms of, okay, I'm trying to get some AWS keys and secrets, but I found this username, okay? So I can try to do kind of OSINT, which is a boost, trying to search for open source intelligence. So if you see here, there are kind of information that I can find based on the user attached to this, specifically key and secrets. So you can have, for the offensive perspective, more than one information. So imagine, of course, here I'm just list some administrator users. I found this another username, which is Filipi Pires, but I could use it, for example, together, but I'm just putting 86, which is another name. but I can try to put in like Filipi Pires, for example, to do another research. But if you see here, there are a bunch of information in terms of, let's say, OSINT that I can try to find, or even to find more information in terms of, for example, bucket S3. And here I can see some kind of summary about AI, for example, that brings what is Filipi. In this case, it's me, a professional based on the US, because I have my residency in US as well, in out of Dallas. I'm head of Identity Labs, which is me, online presence, some information about my GitHub, which is true, my Instagram, in this case is my private Instagram. I have both private and the other and more professional. I'm Brazilian guy, Gaúcho, which is from south of Brazil. So this is the summary about all those information that I found. I can see here the summary, some information. We can try to see if there are kind of secrets or key exposed. In my case, they cannot find anything. The data, the graph way, you can see here, for example, to see if you are more interesting in terms of perspective of the username attached. If you see here, there are kind of accounts related to this specifically username. Timeline here, as you can see, and the map, which is where I was based for last few months. Let's see if they can find me. They didn't find me. Why? Because I didn't enable my localization because of that. But that's interesting point here. So if you think about Filipi Pires, everything together, I just put in here, they put in username. So you click here. So they will try to see the information about this guy. So they just bring this Trello information. They are trying to find more information about me. Let's see. Some related to. So some more information that I try to building this. So basically just other possibilities to try to find or to integrate this, like a secret keys, or to try to figure how you can explore those environment, those type of things. I was presenting this at Black Hat in Middle East. Was interesting because the guy came to me and said, okay, that's my private email, let's see if they can find some information about me. So I just figure, and we found any information mainly because they enabled the localization at the Google account. And I found information that he was traveling 3 weeks ago in a specific country in the Saudi, and they was like there was shocked that we found this information because they enable localization, and that's the simple things here, which is cool, amazing, nice. So just I think I finish here. So I don't know, guys, if you have any information about that or any questions, but basically that's the message that I would like to bring to you today. Thinking about the attacker, so cybersecurity is not easy. It's not difficult. We just need to understand how each application works or each cloud works. We need to understand how each permission works, and based on that, just walking through that. And we just need to have this creative mindset, like thinking about that and the logical about that. Okay, I found a secret, and I found some, like, for example, a malicious username or no malicious, or I found some information, how I can correlate this. So thinking about the attacker. So if I put in this here in the OSINT, if I try to change this secrets key, so what is the standard policy? How much actions I have this standard policy? Just thinking about the attacker, you can go there. That's it. Thank you guys again for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope something should be useful for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great. It's great information. Definitely some good questions coming off Discord and stuff, like Filipi said. Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's a super cool tool. Like, I'm definitely gonna go check it out, even though I'm not like a cloud expert. It's not my forte, but I see people, pen testers and stuff, getting in, finding all kinds of good stuff to do those misconfigurations with permissions and all. That's amazing. Yeah, if you have any last minute questions, please do post them now. Otherwise, of course, have a great weekend, a great holiday season if you're going to be celebrating. Any final shout outs you want to make, Filipi?
Yeah, actually, I like to mention this. I know that the guys have a bunch of experience in different, let's say, in the field, in the cybersecurity field. My main takes here is to you guys is learn the base in terms of whatever thing you like: cloud, on-primes, offensive security, defensive security, OSINT or malware analysis. I have a bunch of articles and presentation about malwares. I love talk about malwares. And but again, thinking about those bases and focus on those bases, and there are kind of learning path and a kind of journey until to being an expert or whatever. Respect this journey. So this is my message, and I try to enjoy this journey because I know that's difficult, but it's not a big deal, you know. Like, it's easier. It's just to be more creative in your mindset. How you can do this, can do that. If you have a basis, you can use your creative mindset, a creative mind. That's my
Yeah,
main
good.
takes for you guys.
Yeah, good stuff. And that's one of the great things about cybersecurity is like there's something for everyone in it. And even if you get tired of something after a while, there's like 50,000 other places you can go. But
Yeah.
yeah, thanks again for sharing. It's always great having people on, giving back to the community and great resource and stuff. You're a great speaker as well. So anytime you want to come back on, love to have you.
Oh, let's talk about malware. Let's
Yeah,
schedule for next year. Something about that. I love it.
yeah, sounds good.
I,
Let me
I,
know.
I yeah, I just allowed some hours in the live session, and that's it. Let's see what we can find.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We'll post soon about the next stream we're gonna have coming up. But thanks to Felipe for coming on, and happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.